What is up, New York Giants fans? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tommy's Takes. I'm your host, Tommy G. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me. And for that, thank you. Please like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Also, check me out on Twitter at TommyG105. I'll be dropping the hottest Giants content and takes all season long. If you're watching now and you haven't subscribed, please do. It means a lot to us. Helps us curate this content and get it out to you. Appreciate that. And without further ado, let's get into it. Panthers at Giants, week number 2. Giants come riding high off of a road victory against the Titans. You've seen a lot of great things from the Giants in that game. You've seen the Saquon Barkley resurgence tour. You've seen the offensive line kind of play half and half. Pass blocking wasn't great. Run blocking was awesome. You've seen some gaping holes there, which was nice to see. Defense up and down again. They made some stops when they really needed to. Couldn't really get the stop at the end of the game there. A couple of defensive penalties. But Giants also had a visit from someone else. Lady Luck. Randy Bullock, wide left on the kick, shanked it, and the Giants came out 1-0. They were a 5.5-point road dog in that game. Panthers, unfortunately, not so lucky. Kind of had the flip side of it. They got down early versus Cleveland 14-0, then 17-3. Baker and the offense then kicked it in. A little too late. They took the lead late and gave the Browns too much time. Browns kicked the field goal as time expired, and Panthers went to 0-1. So Panthers could easily be 1-0 as well, like the Giants. Anyone who knows the NFL knows. Game of inches. Game of luck sometimes. The skill to put you in position to utilize that luck. And Giants had some of it. Panthers did not. But very interesting matchup. Last time these two teams played, Giants won 25-3. That's the infamous Daniel Jones, the one-handed reception game, if you all remember. But a lot of changes on both sides, right? Giants have changed their whole coaching staff around, new GM, new pieces. And the Carolina Panthers, they had a complete facelift of their coaching staff. Really thinking about it, I think Rule was kind of under the gun here, right? A little bit of heat on him. Struggled last season mightily. Huge contract coming out of college. And he basically engineered a complete facelift of the coaching staff. You got Steve Wilks as the defensive coordinator. You got Paul Pasqualoni as the D-line coach. You have Chris Taylor as a special teams coordinator. And offensive coordinator, Ben McAdoo. Giants fans all remember Ben McAdoo was the offensive coordinator in New York, then got promoted to head coach. First year, he gets into the playoffs in 2016. Next year, not a good season. The benching of Eli, bringing in Geno Smith to start, ruining Eli's start record. Giants fans know, not going to dig too deep into it. And then McAdoo is gone just like that. As quick as his success was to the top, as quick as he was to the bottom. But that should be interesting seeing him come back to MetLife as the Panthers offensive coordinator. Panthers also made some other moves in the offseason, bringing in Baker Mayfield. They traded a conditional 5th-round pick to Cleveland. Could also go to a 4th-round pick depending on how Baker plays. They picked him up as the face of their franchise. He's going to be starting at quarterback. Started last week. Played fairly well under duress there, but that was a big move for them. They basically, re-signed cornerback Deontay Jackson, a 4-year extension for DJ Moore, which was big for the Panthers. Outside of Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, in my opinion, is their second most dynamic offensive player. Other than that, Johnny Hecker as punter, great punter, top 3 punter. That was the majority of the moves that the Panthers made. Really, it was the coaching staff moves. When you turn over an entire coaching staff like that outside of the head coach, that's big. That's basically, ownership probably went to Rule and said, hey, you got to get this fixed or your butt's going to be on the line too. And that's what happened. And they drafted Iquanu, who was someone that was probably on the Giants' radar as well. They drafted him on the offensive line. Looked pretty good last week in run blocking. That was the majority of their moves for the offseason. Panthers have struggled for a while now since the Cam Newton days, right? Giants have struggled for a while. That's why I think this is going to be a really interesting matchup. When you look at the Panthers last week, really, honestly, a couple questionable calls, non-calls away from winning that game. A tough game versus Cleveland. So I don't think this is any type of layup for the Giants. Obviously, coming off a huge emotional high with the road victory against Tennessee. Let's get something squared away and something upfront and honest. This is still a rebuilding football team. That win was great. It was awesome. It provided the fans some excitement, some energy, renewed vigor. It stopped the 6 straight 0-2 starts to the season streak, right? Something that was critical for this team. And it put some belief in the building there, which was the most important part. But talent-wise, still a very barren roster. You've seen issues with the linebackers, especially when it came to covering. But the Panthers have similar issues. They lost on a 58-yard field goal, 26-24. They were down, like I said, 14-0. They came back. Mayfield played okay. He was 16 of 27 for 235 and a touchdown. Panthers struggled to get their rushing attack going. And that's something the Giants want to keep an eye on. They had 54 rushing yards. They allowed 4 sacks. They struggled against screenplays and misdirection. That's something I think the Giants are going to work with here, especially as the Giants struggled with their pass protection as well. I think they're going to try to get some quick stuff going and some misdirection going against the Panthers. But when you really look at it, 8 penalties for 96 yards for Carolina. Worst stat of all, this was the Panthers' 8th consecutive loss in a row. Number 1 in the NFL, most losses in a row right now. So when you really dig into this matchup, you have 2 teams coming in. Giants have plenty of question marks too. Giants question marks lay a lot more on the injury side. Kadarius Toney continues to be a question mark. There always seems to be a cloud over Kadarius Toney ever since he got to the team. And just to be fair to him, he's a phenomenal talent. When he has been on the field, he's explosive, he's dynamic, he has the wiggle, he has the shakes, he has it all. He could catch good hands, seems like a great teammate. But there is always something going on with Kadarius Toney. And you see today when, this week when he goes on the injury report out of nowhere, and he barely played last weekend. So he's back on the injury report, back fighting with the media, in the media, which is not good. Never want to see that from a player, especially during the season, especially when he's not playing, especially when he's hurt. You're hearing rumors about him practicing with the third team, that's not because he's been hurt, in my opinion. That's because he's not prepared and he's not ready to play. Whether the injuries led him down that road of not being prepared, only the coaching staff knows and Tony knows. But Giants fans are very frustrated because this is a talented kid and this is an offense that needs dynamic playmakers. Saquon is looking better. You need another guy. You need a number 2. And, last week when you looked at the receivers, Shepard played well, had a good game. Galladay, as usual, was invisible. Sills, who started the game, didn't really do too much. Wandale injured. He only played about a quarter or so. So Giants need Kadarius Toney back. This is a bad situation. And this is one of those situations that if you let it brew, it's going to be tough. It's going to build up more animosity, more media scrutiny and heat. What's wrong with Toney? Is he playing this week? Is he hurt? Why is he not playing? Why is he attacking the media? It's a tough situation for the Giants. Either way, flat out, he needs to get on the field. Daniel Jones absolutely needs him on the field, plain and simple. So it'll be interesting to see what happens versus Carolina. If Toney starts, how many snaps he played. I think he only had 7 snaps against Tennessee. And when you're looking at one of the most dynamic players on the offense only getting 7 snaps, that's why the media pries into it. That's why the media asks questions. And then that's why he gets upset and he kind of lashes out. But the actual reasoning is legit. You're one of the most dynamic players, Kadarius Toney. You were a first-round pick by the New York Football Giants. You need to be on the field. Struggled to get on the field last season to start the year. Got on the season, made some waves. Got in the beginning of the season. You made your waves, had some good plays. Got injured, never came back, right? New season, fresh start. You play 7 snaps in game 1, least out of any receiver. Now injured 3 days after that. Limited, not sure if he's going to play. Got to get him back on the field. That's critical for the Giants. Secondly, the edge rush, the pass rush for the Giants. Basically non-existent versus Tennessee. Giants got 1 sack, but basically Tannehill was able to do whatever he wanted back there. He could have made a sandwich, cooked a ham, whatever. He had plenty of time back there. And surprisingly, and I give Wink a lot of credit, he didn't tear up the defense as bad as he could have with the time he had to do it. So you're looking at Tibbs and Azeez, both practice limited this week. Looking like Thibodeau might play. Azeez possibly. If the Giants could get their 2 edge rushers back, that would be the biggest boost for them. Because The Panthers did struggle with pass protection. Baker was sacked, I believe, 4 times last week. He got stripped. He fumbled. Baker actually fumbled in that game 4 times, and they recovered their own fumble all 4 times. So he's to be had. If you're this Giants defense and you're watching that film against the Browns, he's to be had. He's putting that ball out there in harm's way, but you got to get pressure. You got to get to him. Tannehill, like I said, had all day. Giants only had 5 QB hits in 33 attempts. A couple of them were soft QB hits, not full hits. Panthers allowed 4 sacks, like I said, and Baker was under duress the whole game. So you have a team that struggled with pass blocking in the Panthers last week, and a team with the Giants that struggled to get pressure. So if they can get Thibodeau and Aziz back, I really, really think that tilts this game a lot more in the Giants' favor. If you have to look at another game of, Zimenez and Roche, kind of that tandem, it's going to be tough because Zimenez, he played well last week. He had the weird play where he hesitated and kind of did the tango and didn't go for the sack. But overall, he played well. I think he had 6 tackles, 2 QB hits. So he played okay. He had some good energy. But you need your big guns, and this is why you drafted Aziz at the top of the second round. And this is why you drafted Kayvon Thibodeau top 5 in the draft this past offseason. Giants get those 2 guys back, and I think you see more of, I won't say one-sided, I don't want to say one-sided. You see more of a Giants control game. You see more of a Giants controlling the clock. That's the other part of the Panthers. They got absolutely dominated by the Browns in time of possession, 38 minutes to 21 minutes. So if the Giants could get pressure, get the ball back, give the ball to Saquon Barkley, dominate time of possession, could be money in the bank. But they got to get those 3 players healthy. Tony, Thibodeau, and Aziz. Got to get those players on the field. We'll go into some, we'll say matchups. We'll say some things that I'm curious about, some things I want to see how the Giants handle. First and foremost, and this is on everybody's mind. This is on everybody's plate, so to speak. You have the Giants front 7 versus Christian McCaffrey. Now, Giants linebackers got absolutely cooked, victimized in the Titans game. You've seen Hilliard from the Titans basically have his way. He had his way on the goal line with Calitro. You've seen Crowder having a whale of a time trying to cover in space. And Hilliard and Henry are not Christian McCaffrey in space. Christian McCaffrey could arguably be the most dynamic running back in space. And you have these linebackers going to go out there to cover him. So I'm very interested to see how the Giants handle this, right? So Christian McCaffrey is going to get the ball receiving. I think the Panthers are going to give a large dose of him receiving, whether that's wheel routes, motions, slots, whatever it might be. He struggled last week, only 10 carries for 35 yards, 33 yards, 3.3 yards per carry. But it's week 1. Obviously, he was hurt last year. What did the Giants do, right? We might be asking. One, in my opinion, I think Micah McFadden needs to start. Crowder, Calitro, Crowder played okay last week, had the nice hit on Henry, but really when you look at Tate Crowder, in my opinion, he's not a starting linebacker in the NFL. He's more of a second or third string. When you're watching the game and you see a run play go towards Tate Crowder, you instantly see him get impacted backwards. It's actually visibly noticeable on the television broadcast. But he can play on the edges. He can cover over the middle. You don't want him to get too far out there in zone, as you've seen versus Hilliard when Hilliard did the wheel route, scored easily. Crowder wasn't anywhere near him for the touchdown. I think McFadden starts over Calitro. McFadden's not the most athletic linebacker, but he's young. He could hit. He could run downhill. He could stick. I think what the Giants do here to negate that and to neutralize that is they come with more dime package, quarters package. Excuse me. You're going to see a lot more cornerbacks on the field than you're going to see linebackers, which also leads to the other tough part. Aaron Robinson, second-string cornerback for the New York Giants, had the appendectomy this week. He's out. That's a tough injury for the Giants to have. But I think regardless, you're going to see a lot of Tony Jefferson. You're going to see a lot of Julian Love. You're going to see them inside the box. You're going to see Wink mix it up, get creative. I think that's how the Giants are going to negate Christian McCaffrey because you have to. This linebacking core is not going to cover him in space. You're asking way too much of them. They can go after him in the running game, but covering him in space is going to be impossible. So you'll see some dime. You'll possibly even see some quarters at times and obvious passing downs. You're going to see maybe Julian Love slide to the cornerback spot and Jefferson and McKinney kind of rotate in and out with safeties. I think that's how the Giants neutralize that. Wink will obviously get creative, as he always does. He's going to be bringing blitzes. Excuse me. I'm going to be bringing blitzes. He's going to be bringing the house. He's going to be bringing guys from different directions. That's going to be something you're going to look out for. But I think it's going to be heavy dime, nickel, sometimes quarters. Because if you get McCaffrey in space on Crowder, you get McCaffrey in space on Calitro, it's it. It's over. He's gonna get open. You know, if Hilliard from the Titans got open against him, McCaffrey's gonna smoke him. So I think that's what you see from Wink. I think they can game plan for that. I think they can be successful. Can the Panthers withstand the pressure? You know, that's the bottom line. Wink's going to bring pressure. Seen it versus the Titans last week. Loves to bring free rushers, right? Loves to get creative with it. But when you really look at the matchup there, I think the Giants defense still has the upper hand. You know, I don't think the Panthers really showed much on offense last week. Yeah, they scored a couple touchdowns late. I don't think the Browns' defense is as good as it's been either. So, you know, if Wink could scheme up a good game plan and, you know, he could bring pressure and the linebackers could cover a little or the secondary can step up and they can get in the box, they can shut down Christian McCaffrey. At this point, it's going to be one-dimensional, right? You're going to be looking for Baker Mayfield to drop back, beat you with his arm, beat you passing, which he has struggled with for the last year and a half or so. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see if Wink could do what he has to do there. Going to be tough for both sides because Matt McCaffrey didn't have a good week last week, and the Giants linebackers didn't cover in space well. So that's one matchup I'm looking at. You know, the next matchup I'm looking at, and if you're a Giants fan and you're looking at this matchup on paper, this is a good matchup. You have the Carolina run defense against Saquon Barkley. So Saquon Barkley, obviously, with the huge game last week, 194 total yards, 9.1 yards per carry, 6 catches for 30 yards, utilized him in the passing game. You basically seen it all from Saquon last week. So, you know, when you look at the Panthers last week, on their run defense was deplorable. You know, there's no other way to really look at it. You know, Nick Chubb had his way. Kareem Hunt had his way. They combined for 5.7 yards per carry, which was brutal. And really, those two running backs almost ran the Panthers out of that game. And Panthers had no answer for them. I believe they had almost exclusive outside runs that broke free. So look for the Giants to get Barkley on the outside hashes. Obviously had success with Barkley on the outside hashes versus Tennessee. That's where he had the big 65-plus yard run up the left sideline. And that's going to be a big matchup for this New York Giants team. If they can control the ball and they can get Barkley on the perimeter in space like they did versus Tennessee, going to be tough for the Panthers because, in my opinion, Titans offense is a better offense than the Panthers offense, right? So if you could control the clock just like the Browns did last week against Carolina, if you can get Barkley going in space, that's going to be tough for the Panthers to combat that. And they couldn't do it last week. Like I said, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, you know, ran all over them. I think they gave up 200 rushing yards in total. So Giants are going to try to capitalize on that. Panthers are definitely going to stack the box against Barkley. Just like the Titans did, they're going to dare Daniel Jones to beat them with his arm. They're going to take away Barkley as much as they can, and this is where creativity comes into play, right? This is where you have Brian DeBall and Mike Kafka. Can they scheme around that? Can they scheme around 7-8 men in the box looking at Barkley? That's what great coaching does, and that's what the Giants are going to need to do because Panthers watched that film and they seen Barkley, skedaddling up the sideline for 65-plus yards. They seen him get wiggling for that 2-point conversion. So, Panthers are on that. And this is why I said this is going to be a great test of the new New York Giants coaching staff. They looked great last week against Tennessee. A lot of times in week 1, you do see surprise games, especially from underdogs. This is going to be a real crucial test for the Giants coaching staff. Scheme Barkley into space. Get him out there. You've seen a lot of motion from this New York Giants offense last week. You're going to see a ton of motion every single week going forward. That's what this offense is going to be predicated with against. And listen, it worked last week, and it worked against a pretty good defense. That defense, you've seen Jeffrey Simmons on the Titans D-line eating the Giants' offensive line up, having his way, almost single-handedly wrecked the game for the Giants, had the strip fumble on Jones. So that was a good defense. So what the Giants did against them was impressive. Don't let anybody tell you any different. While speaking about the Giants' offensive line, another interesting matchup here is the Panthers D-line versus the Giants offensive line. You have Brian Burns on the Carolina Panthers defensive line. Awesome player, 9 sacks each of the last 2 seasons. Dynamic, could get after the passer. And you have a Giants pass blocking offensive line. Let's put it straight. They struggled last week. They really did. If you really look at it, I think Daniel Jones was pressured on over 60% of his dropbacks, and he only dropped back 33 times. So, that was tough to see for the Giants, newly revamped offensive line, because you want to see the pass blocking be there. You want to see Daniel Jones develop. If the pass blocking is not going to be there, you're not going to see Daniel Jones develop, unfortunately. When you really look deep inside the numbers, I'm sorry, he didn't drop back 33 times. It was more, I think it was around 23 times he dropped back. Either way, ridiculous amount of pressure at 60% clip, constantly under fire. Did he walk himself into some sacks? Did he play himself into some sacks? I think he did. I think he started to hear kind of those footsteps when he was back there, especially after he had the strip sack fumble. You can kind of see him watching the defensive line when he dropped back. Never good when the quarterback drops back and looks at the defensive line instead of downfield. That's when you get a lot of checkdowns. He missed Sills on the deep pass down the left sideline. That was tough to see, even though they went back to it to check out with Shepard later in the game. This is a big game for the Giants pass blocking. They got to show up. You can't have your quarterback get pressured 60% of the time. You just can't have that. That's just not feasible. You're going to have forced fumbles. You're going to have turnovers. You're going to have a quarterback that is scared to throw it and skittish and checking down and taking the quickest pass available. So, big onus on pass blocking for the Giants. Andrew Thomas, Bredesen, Feliciano, Zudu, Neal, whatever combination is out there, protect the quarterback. Big shout out to those guys, though, for run blocking, especially rookie Joshua Zudu. Awesome run blocking. Really nice to see. I think I want to see a lot more of that going forward as this offensive line starts to gel. All right, next one. Giants pass rush versus the Carolina's offensive line. So, like I said earlier, Giants didn't get a lot of pass rush against the Titans. They're going to get their 2 edge rushers back, hopefully. We're hoping that, right? Got to get after the quarterback. That's going to be critical. If they can't get after Baker Mayfield, good luck. You're not going to do much in that game. So I look for several things out of this game from the Giants. Mainly, they're going to try to get Barkley going again. No question about that. You ride the hot hand. 9.1 yards per carry for Saquon last week. Got to get him the ball in space. You're going to look for trickeration. I think the Giants are going to try to negate some of the pass blocking issues with some misdirection, some screens, some reverses, some quick snap counts, some quick out passes, slant passes, just to kind of negate that upfield pressure by the defensive line. I think that the Giants are going to try to bring more secondary onto the field. Like I said earlier, less linebackers. The linebacking position is going to be a big struggle for this Giants team going forward. I'm telling you, this is not a good linebacking core, and has nothing to do with Blake Martinez getting cut. He still hasn't been picked up yet, but this is not a good linebacking core. And as Giants fans out there, you've all been talking about and hearkening of the days of LT and Carl Banks and Pepper Johnson and Gary Reasons, that this team hasn't put emphasis on linebackers. I think this may be the worst linebacking core the Giants have had since the 80s, and they've had some bad ones. So Wink Martindale getting paid a hefty fee, you're going to earn it, because you're going to have to scheme your way into some victories, because these linebackers are liabilities. You hope that McFadden as a rookie can come in and get the position down quickly, and he could play well. But boy, these linebackers looked rough in versus Tennessee. Now for the Panthers, they're going to be looking at a complete opposite. They want to get the run going. They want to use the run to set up the pass. I don't think they want to have Baker drop back, 40 times, 50 times after he got sacked 4 times last week and fumbled 4 times. Like I said earlier, they got lucky and they recovered all 4. But they're going to look to use the run. especially if Thibodeau and Aziz do play. Obviously, both still up in the air. Giants have to stop that. Stack the box, let Baker Mayfield beat you. Yes, he has DJ Moore. He has Robbie Anderson, who he hit on a deep touchdown last Sunday. Let him beat you. Do not let them use the run to set up the pass. Baker had his issues in Cleveland. I do think he's a solid quarterback, but let him beat you. Let him drop back. Let him throw it 30, 40 times. Let him tire out. Let's get this secondary some work. You're going to see, probably a lot of safeties when you got Dane Belton coming back. You have Xavier McKinney. You have Tony Jefferson. I think they're going to be in the box a lot. I think you're going to see some safety blitzes from Wink, but they're going to try to stuff that run early. Let Baker beat him. And I think the Panthers are going to have the same game plan. Let Daniel Jones beat him. Now, for the Giants, it's about injuries. Like I said earlier in the show, if they can get Aziz, Thibodeau, and Tony back healthy for this game, this Giants team is better than this Panthers team. No way you could look at that. Running back wise, it's basically a toss-up. I think the Giants' offensive line is better than the Panthers' offensive line. Shout out to Ekwonu. They got Ekwonu. He's a rookie just like Neal. Both had their struggles last week. So if I'm going to go a prediction, I'm going to probably go Giants 21, Panthers 17. I think the Giants are able to control the line of scrimmage. I think you do see one of the Giants' defensive ends get back healthy here, which is a huge help. I think the Giants force Mayfield into a couple of early turnovers, which shifts the balance of the game. I think Daniel Jones has a really good game. Like I said earlier, you've seen some things you like from Daniel Jones in the last game. You also seen some things you really don't like from him in that last game. But this is a new offensive system. And when people talk about Daniel Jones, it's always, the people that don't support Jones, excuses. Everything's an excuse. This is a new offensive system. This is a complicated offensive system. With one word changes at the line of scrimmage. This is something different from Daniel Jones and these receivers. Considering that, going into a hostile crowd and territory against a very good secondary, a very good defensive line in Tennessee, he played okay. So I'm assuming versus the Panthers, he'll take that next step forward. When you're looking at Jones and you're looking at this offense together, awesome to have Sterling Shepard back on this team. Sterling Shepard is really an unsung player on this team. Everyone knows he's the oldest Giant, the longest tenured Giant. But just look at Sunday. Not only did he catch the deep bomb touchdown, his blocking was awesome. He helped spring Saquon on a couple of those runs. So having Shepard back is a huge help, not just for the Giants offense, but for Daniel Jones as kind of that safety blanket. Does Tony play? Do they switch up the wide receivers? You've seen Richie James have an impact game Sunday. He did have the big drop on third down, which you want to see him clean up, but he played well. Brings a lot of value in the return game, brings a lot of value in the receiving game. So it'll be curious to see, Slayton didn't dress. Do they dress Slayton in this game? Do they feel like matchup-wise, Slayton can kind of take the top off the defense? Or do they run with what they had in Galladay, Tony, Shepard, Sills, and Robinson? I don't know where Robinson's at health-wise. I heard he was making strides. Obviously, it wasn't as bad as originally thought, which is good. Don't think he'll play this week, possible. But I don't think you see him. So I think you might see Slayton get activated, and that would be a great comeback story for Slayton. Almost cut during the offseason. It took a big pay cut to stay with the team, which is admirable. Handled it like a true professional. And I'm somebody that's been hard on Slayton after his solid rookie year with the drops, with the mental issues out there. So, be interesting to see what the Giants do. Either way, I think this Giants running game is going to be too strong for Carolina. I think it's a close game probably as you head into the third quarter, fourth quarter. And then I think the Giants' offensive run blocking just wears that Panthers D-line down. I think Barkley gets loose again. Barkley gets himself another 100 yards rushing. Don't want to jinx the Giants. This is just what I feel, what I'm envisioning. I think Baker turns it over a couple times late. This one doesn't come down to a field goal. How amazing would it be, right, Giants fans, if you go 2-0 to start the season? After 5 consecutive years of 0-2, you could actually go 2-0. The mathematical equations when you go from 0-2 to 2-0 in the NFL couldn't be a bigger delta between the two. So if the Giants could head into this game versus the Panthers, get pressure just like Cleveland did on Carolina, run the ball just like they did versus Tennessee, pop a couple of pass plays, don't turn it over. If you're Daniel Jones, be safe. be careful. Don't throw interceptions in the red zone. Tuck it down, run it, throw it out of bounds. You know the old adage, live to fight another down. That's critical. If Daniel Jones doesn't throw that red zone pick there, maybe that game is even more different. Maybe the Giants could lock that game up even earlier. So if you're Daniel Jones, play within the game plan. Don't force anything. Take your shots when you're there and hand that ball to Saquon Barkley and let him cook.